Let's return one more time to our chart that we started in another video. We're going to look at the last method for solving quadratic equations, and it's using the quadratic formula. The advantage is it can always be used no matter what quadratic equation you have. It doesn't matter if there's a 1 in front of the squared term, or if the middle term is even, or if it's factorable. It doesn't matter. The disadvantages, it's more difficult than factoring because there's a square root in it. And I have to tell you that I think the disadvantage is students make a lot of arithmetic errors with this. The preparation for it is to get the equation equal to 0. The way you can remember the ones that you have to get equal to 0, it's the ones that have the F, factoring, and the formula. You get equal to 0. The other two, you isolate something, either the radical or the x pieces of the equation. So let's look at using that quadratic formula. You will see in your notes here the quadratic formula is given by x equals, and then you see the whole thing here. You will need to memorize that. It's something that you have to know. And probably will want to write on the front of any test that you take so that you can refer to it when it comes up. I will tell you kind of a silly way to remember it. I said it was silly, but it will be helpful. So here's how you want to think of it as: a negative boy was undecided about attending a radical party. I told you it was silly. So he attended and hung out with another square boy. So 2 square boys hung out. Consequently, they lost 4 awesome chicks and left the party at 2 a.m. I did not come up with it, but it will help you remember it. So remember that once you have the formula, you must make sure that your equation is in standard form or equal to 0. So let's try one. We have 6x squared minus 5x minus 4 equals 0. The first thing we want to check for is it equal to 0? And it is. So we're going to identify our A, our B, and our C in that equation. Remember, the A is the number in front of the squared term, so it's 6. The B is the number and its sign in front of the unsquared variable, so negative 5 in this case. And the C is the other number, negative 4. Now what you do is you just plug it in. So x equals negative b in the formula means the opposite of what b is. So if it's negative 5, it's positive 5. Plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now we have to simplify. X equals 5 plus or minus square root of 25. Now my next thing that I do is I look at my signs to see if it's going to be a plus or a minus. A negative times a negative is going to be a positive. 4 times 4 is 16, times 6 is 96, all over 12. Let's bring this up here. X equals 5 plus or minus the square root. If you add those, you get 121 all over 12. But square root of 121, that's a perfect square. So x equals, take the square root, which is 11, 5 plus or minus 11 over 12. Now we're going to split it. 5 plus 11, oops, that was supposed to be a 12, sorry, over 12, and 5 minus 11 over 12. This is 16 over 12. Simplifying that fraction by dividing by 4 gives you 4/3 as your first x. Here I have negative 6 over 12. Simplifying gives me negative 1/2. That is the quadratic equation. Let's do one more. 4x squared equals 8x minus 1. It is definitely not prepared yet. We need to get it equal to 0. So we're going to subtract an 8x from both sides. That will give me 4x squared minus 8x equals -1. And now we're going to add a -1. Some of you may be thinking, wouldn't it have been easier to subtract the 4x squared from both sides? Yes, it would have. But if you can, you want to keep your squared coefficient positive instead of negative because it will work out better in the formula. Nothing wrong with doing it the other way. It should come out the same. It's just that you have to be more careful with signs. All right, I am now ready to identify the A, B, and C. A is 4, B is -8, and C is 1. So x equals the opposite of b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals 8 plus or minus 64. This is going to be minus 16, 4 times 4, all over 8. X equals 8 plus or minus the square root of 48 over 8. Don't even think about cross-canceling those 8's yet. You can't do that until this is simplified. Remember, there are 3 terms here. Let's bring this up. X equals 8 plus or minus. We're going to break down 48 into its biggest perfect square factors of 16 and 3. Square root of 16 is 4. X equals 8 plus or minus 4 radical 3 over 8. Now, we can simplify if you remember the 3 terms. 1, 2, and 3. What will go into all 3 of those terms? 4. So 4 goes into 8 twice, it goes into 4 once, it goes into 8 twice, and you get 2 plus or minus 1 radical 3 over 2. And no, you cannot cross cancel those 2's, remember, unless the radical 3 had something that would also cross cancel.